Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining this podcast. My name is Meghraj, and I have with me Shaji Namnath, who is a technology leader with over 25 plus years of experience in product management, digital transformation, and emerging technology. Shaji has recently transitioned to Honeywell and brings a unique perspective on how AI is transforming business and society. So, Saji, welcome to this podcast. You have anything to say before we start our journey on these questions? So, you want to add anything on that?
No, not really. Good morning, and thanks for this opportunity and inviting me for this. Happy to have a conversation.
Okay, so Saji, without wasting much time, I would move to my first question. It seems you have spent more than 25 years in technology leadership, right? And you have
Yeah.
just made a significant career transition. So my question is, what drives you at this stage of your career, and why is right now the right time to have this move in your in your career? Is what my question is.
Thanks for asking that question. It's really interesting. And you notice that I made a move not really recently. I think this change was around 5 years, 5 to 6 years ago. I'm really liking it. It's an exciting opportunity. Earlier, I was doing the technology leadership role for a while. And then I had this interest to work on the product management and business related roles. So as you know, when you work in large corporations, this is the kind of opportunity sometimes you can grab where there will be multiple career opportunities available. And then I used that in my earlier organization, and then that helped me to move into the role which I'm doing right now. In the technology leadership, if you really look at it, it's all about how to build solutions to the customer and when to make it happen. So you are working on something which is with certain constraints, which could be the triple constraints of cost, risk, and timeline, etc. But whereas when it comes to product management and then business roles, it's about what needs to be built, and why it is to be built. So it's more of a strategic and visionary role. And that itself is an excitement, right? Having worked on side where all the requirements are already given and then you are asked to build it versus you need to build that requirement working with the end customers. So that's really an exciting journey, and I really liking it.
Yeah, so nice to hear that, and it was a great insight into why you this. Let's and how the rubber meets the road kind of model, right? You just explained very quickly. So I just moving to my next question is, you recently posted that 2026 is the year of AI leaps, right? And starts to impact our physical world at scale, like leaps of our screens and starts to impact. That's a bold statement. What I mean. So, what do you mean by that? What specific changes are you seeing? So, with this statement that you made, recently.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, AI is not really new, right? AI has been there for some time. It existed as brain with no body, as I would say. Why I'm saying that, it is basically we used AI to respond to certain queries. There are algorithms and it comes up with solutions. But now it is changing actually. AI is moving from like prompting and response mode to actually acting, right? That is where agents come into play. I can give you some examples from my industry right now where I work on the utility side, right? Suppose if there is a leak detected on the water network, in the earlier context, an AI will look at how to detect that leak, like, okay, and then probably where to detect, where the leak is. But in the new AI agentic world, if you really look at it, what is going to happen is the solution what we are building is going not only to detect the leak, it also identify the cause of it. It looks at what part of the network is, having this issue and what part needs to be ordered, and even create a work order for the technician to act on it and make an appointment, etc. So you see, the entire workflow can be automated, and that is why AI is getting into physical world now. It's not just giving a brainy solution; it's just acting,
So
and
it's
that
like
is that bad. Yeah, sorry.
it's like the software to the implementation, right? You have robotics
Yeah,
taking into the
exactly,
face. So the
exactly.
collaborative, yeah, I think.
Absolutely. So it's very exciting, So that is why AI is getting into the physical aspect of the technological solutions.
Okay. So you said this, the use cases that you made, but what do you think about the scale and what does it mean for business? Because like how the use cases you have selected, right? This is the real time which you just mentioned, but convincing the whole landscape of business owners and the stakeholders is a challenge, right? Do you feel
Yeah.
that is also one area which you would like to maybe speak just not more than a minute about it?
Yeah, yeah. I think, I mean, and if you, I mean, I took an example from my area, but if you really look at any business context, right, AI can come up with solutions, but how does that help the ROI, so to say, right, from a business perspective? What business value I am getting out of it? Not just solving a problem, by solving that problem, what is the end result? How is that ultimately impacting my profit and loss, right? And how the customer satisfaction is improved, and how I can have that solution sustainable, and how I can plug that into an end-to-end business solution, right? And how to commercialize it. These are the real thing which we need to work on. So I think a lot of stakeholders are involved in this, and we need to manage the expectations by navigating through the solution, not just only the excitement of the solution, but also about the nuisance which we need to work through it.
Yeah, and also the timeline, right? Because sometimes quick visibility of the solution of an AI may not be visible. It sometimes may take a lot of more time to train the model and come out with like a timeline. So, what do you think on that perspective?
Yeah, that is interesting actually. If you really look at it, building a prototype can take 10 to 20% of the time. But people get excited with that prototype. You see some, nice visuals, built, and then, the solution. So, but putting that into a solution, working model, that takes the rest of the time. And that 20% can be 1 month or 2 weeks, the pilot, but the real building the solution and deploying it in a production environment could be anywhere 6 months or more than that. So it is not the excitement of just showing the result. It is also building it and making it available to the end customer in a way where they really appreciate the outcome of.
Okay.
That's a journey. And then, we are still working on how that the duration can be shortened, how quickly we can make it happen. And there is a lot of solutions coming up from every nook and corner at the moment, as you know, on AI. Everybody is into AI now. So we need to be very careful how that is stitching into the final end-to-end solution we need to build.
Yeah. So thanks for that. So I think we can move on to our next question regarding the same. So it's an extension of the same. So you have also written that AI is learning everything, right? Except what things actually mean. So I think that's a critical observation from your side. So what's the danger here, and how should an organization address this gap from your perspective?
Yeah, when we say AI is learning everything, it is really true, right? AI is reading documents, AI is reading and going through the visuals, AI is reading, in the context of, again, like if I look at my industry, AI can read the sensor data, SCADA data, meter data. It can read customer contracts. It can read, these ticket logs. You name it, anything and everything. It can go and read, and then it can build inference out of it. But then what AI will be missing sometimes is the context to the solution, right? That's an important aspect where human needs to intervene. The AI reading based on patterns, it might miss the context. For example, as I mentioned in my earlier example, that is the leak detection part, right? AI can find a leak, and then it can even notify a technician. But when to stop the water flow, right? Pipe at some point in time, what customers are going to be impacted in an exact timing, and the implications of that, and those kind of a thing, and societal impact, etc. A technician will have a better understanding of it before taking an action. But
But yeah. So sorry, I just wanted. But do
yeah,
you think that in future, with the robotics, and since the technician, it's a repetitive job and all that, do you think that some part of that will also be taken by AI, and the omni transformation, as we all call it, right? The
yeah.
NVIDIA kind of. So do you think that is also a possibility?
Yeah, of course, it is. It is going in that direction. And who expected, there will be a driverless car, right? Sometime back. Now if you see, it is, automated car and driverless cars are a reality now. Like that, mission critical tasks can be taken care by AI in future. But at the moment, we need to put sufficient guardrails in the solution, so that, because it is still learning and in the stages where it's not sometimes now cannot be fully trusted, right? I think it is still building, but the capabilities are getting built. Yeah, but we will definitely move in that direction, is my view.
Okay, cool. That's nice to hear. And great insights again with whatever you are working on and the knowledge that you are questioning and gaining. So you also asked one more question from a digital transformation leadership perspective. You have questioned who actually leads this digital transformation, right, in your organization. So in your experience, what could be the answer? Because the leadership patterns itself are changing nowadays, right? Is the CEO, CTO, CIO? The CIO has become CTO, as the CTO becomes a CIO. So do you think new roles can emerge or are emerging, or a new, you say the old way of organization is crumbling and the new way is coming from an organizational structure first? And just to extend, why do transform? Because some transformations fail, right? But do you think that we should keep on continuing in this AI era and have a risk-based approach towards it? What is your thought on that?
Yeah, no, I think I have written that some time back about this who drives the digital transformation. There was a joke going on post-COVID, like COVID drives the digital transformation. But if you really look at it, the digital transformation ultimately should be owned by the business. And from that perspective, it is a strategic decision and it should be ultimately owned by the CEO, right? No doubt about that. But then, of course, with all the 100 other things he is focusing on, it needs to be driven by different departments depending upon which area the transformation is impacting, including HR, for example. You need a big change in your workforce in terms of moving into AI readiness, right? AI literacy, and building up the next generation team for that. And then you may have an AI information officer, or
Hmm.
technology officer, or a sales leader. All that, although all of them have their own role to play in terms of the accountability, in terms of making the digital transformation successful. Roles like what I play as a product leader, we become a glue to all these roles, right? We when we are launching a new product into market with all the capabilities, be it AI or not AI, we need to work with all these leaders, to make sure that the strategic intent of the transformation is clear to everybody and they're all aligned to the end goals. So coming back to the other question which you asked, why the transformation fails, of course, one of the main reason is exactly that, the alignment to the end objective. So if that is not clear, AI solution can be very exciting, but then if business is not vouching for it, in terms of the ROI or in terms of the end customer delight, then you may see an apprehension on it, or you may see a different direction going in that. So transformation success depends on the strategic intent of the transformation and alignment to it, and of course, all the technologies and the selections which you make in terms of who are all the associates. If you don't have the skills within the organization, how you will acquire that through partners and other ecosystem, all that
Definitely.
matters.
Yeah. So one important, I think you have made a point. So like I've been also working. So the ways of working is sometimes a red tape, right?
Yeah,
How these different. So you may have a CISO, like security officer, and AI officer working in, because they understand better. But when it comes down to the entire organization, as you rightly pointed out, the ways of working will change. The
yeah.
scrums, the scrum of scrums changes because everything gets changed now with this AI factor. So yeah, I quite agree in a way. And with that question, I think the extension to this will be an automation. So what do you think? It's a threat or opportunity? Because you've been thinking about automation and RPA for years. You've worked in and out of it. How has it evolved from your perspective? And is in future, the automation jobs which were there right now, like in every project or every proposal or anything, people say that will do this much automation for you. But now with this AI and other things, it has drastically taken a leap, right? So
Yeah, of course.
how
Yeah.
the balance and other things would happen that way, is the next question.
Yeah, so I think the question is whether AI is a threat or opportunity, right? So AI will be a threat to tasks for sure, right? Task-based jobs or activities are going to be automated, but it's an opportunity definitely for people. They can scale up and do much exciting things, more strategic than operational sort of a work. And automation is not something new, right? It has been a journey. I mean, what we see, the current automation based on AI is a different scale, so to say. We all know. Probably the earlier automation, which started with industrial automation and then, subsequent computerization, internet era, and all of that had its own addition to the concept of automation, right? Because human tasks and mundane tasks and activities, operational tasks are getting done by machines and softwares. So it will be a problem if you don't evolve based on that. I think an employee or an organization worker needs to understand what is changing, and he needs to adapt to learn the new skills in the AI context, to use AI, and then be a worker who is conversant with the new technology, and how best you can use that for your next level sort of role. If you really look at some of the surveys, I read somewhere, the World Economic Forum survey, which was done I mean, they've been doing surveys over a period of time. Last survey last year, they came out with an observation that around 90 million jobs will be eliminated, by 2030. That is sometimes, when you hear that, you wondering, okay, what's going. But then there is other good news. They are saying around 170 new jobs are going to come. That is 80 plus million jobs adding. So net, I think jobs are only going to increase, is what we hear from all these. I'm sure they have done a good job in terms of surveying the right people, and then I think they did, thousands of organizations are surveyed, etc. So automation is going to help the human society, and the enterprises to make better outcomes. That
Yeah,
is definitely my view.
you're right. While you're saying, I just recalled one example. Just like we had infrastructure as a service in a software landscape. So you have terraforms and other things getting automated, right? But nowadays, self-healing models, the
Yeah,
cloud itself self-heals with the AI. So you don't need that also. So the automation, over automation kind of model is being built, right? And more
yeah,
of left shift is happening. So yeah, you are right. And with that, I think that is where the next question also gets into the thing. What the future of software engineering, right? You're speaking about the future of software engineering with AI. So what does that future look like? How will AI change how we build software? So it's like a engineering kind of question, right? Core engineering, but AI has disrupted everything, even the engineering, software engineering field, right? A 30-year, a 20-year, 25-year guy is building $30 billion of business with AI, with aggregations and all that.
yeah,
So
yeah.
what do you think? Where Devin is coming and all that, So how do you see that field?
Yeah, definitely. AI is impacting like any other field in engineering also. Like software engineering field is definitely impacted. I see on a day-to-day basis on the work what we manage or lead. Right, it is moving away from. I think it started with AI assisted coding, right? And then now it is moving into what is that called context engineering. Where a developer will only write the outcome, business logic, constraints, and high level language, etc. Right, and the AI creates the entire workflow. I mean, entire code. And also, as you mentioned, self healing. Like AI can detect defects, and it can log defects, and then identify the root cause, and then it can fix it, and also take it through the CI/CD pipeline. So it is self healing, right? So, but then developers, I don't know, some forums, I attended. Somebody was telling that the developers will be the future HR for agentic AI solutions. So basically, they will be more or less managing the agentic part of the coding, and they'll not be coding as such.
So even like I'll give you, maybe I just thought while you're saying, like Infosys, service industry. I'm not naming any companies in particular, but the service industries are building this like tools, right? Devin and all that, who would actually go and replace the low level of coding, where only instead of 70 there'll be 5 developers required. So the whole perspective will probably change in the engineering cycle.
Yeah,
What would happen? Yeah.
yeah. It's exponential. The changes what we
Yeah,
see
yeah.
is
So it's at scale,
exponential.
you know where it will go, where it will.
Yeah,
So yeah. So now to build a product, right? You are building. You have to have a AI ready organizations. So from you from product management and strategy perspective, what does it take to build an organization that's truly ready for AI? What are the key components in that? So you are working right now day in day out, right? So just wanted to know what are the key components to build that where you want to reach and stay in the competition is what I could really call it, right?
there are multiple things, so to say. Obviously, most of the organization, I think, as you know, is in the stage of developing pilots.
Mhm.
So, and then, pilots in isolation, and then, patching on top of an existing platform and things like that. So, but there are AI native solutions coming up. AI native development platforms are coming up, and there's a lot of things is in place. So there are multiple things an organization go. Definitely, one is to move from this pilot focused isolated situation to enterprise focused solutions, or I mean, to some to that extent, focus on building an AI center of excellence. And I think, because that has to cater to the various needs of the organization. So one can have centralized control on how these needs to be built, and then build right guardrails on the solution. Because AI can hallucinate and create into a lot more quick direction. See, in the traditional technology context, like it is basically, if user clicks X, we expect Y, right? But in agentic or AI world, it is probabilistic. So it can be 90%, can be 100%, it may not be 100%. So we have to, an organizer need to accept that kind of a situation where we are working on not on a deterministic sort of a solution. It's a probabilistic solution, and therefore we need to be having enough controls to ensure that it's not going in the wrong direction.
And just to add to that, one of the important factors which I have been seeing is the fear of humans, right? Is also getting to invest, like the readiness of, okay, instead of five, three will work, but that will generate a lot of value for at scale to come, rather than looking at just the failure part of it, right? So that may be one of the factors to make a AI ready organization is
Absolutely, yeah.
And that comes to the last question. Okay, before we close our this, we are towards the end of this. So,
Okay.
what is the next chapter? Looking ahead, what are you most excited about? What's the problem or opportunity you're most eager to tackle in the next few years? Maybe, as you said, like in next 4 years, 5 years, things will change. So what will keep you going, and what is that you see in the next chapter?
Well, I think definitely I'm very excited. All the opportunity what is right now exist, right? Of course, there are always your own concerns on various things, but I think overall, we are going in the right directions, in getting solutions worked out of the technology outcomes. So I think I'm very excited about moving into building best class AI based solutions, right? And for that, you need to work with multiple stakeholders in the organization. We have a lot of works to do in terms of identifying the right partners to work with, increasing the AI literacy within the organization, and so on and so forth. And more importantly, the excitement is to talk to the customers, and sit with them and understand what kind of problems can be solved using the latest and greatest technologies. So there is a lot of thing going in that direction. So really a good time to be there.
I think the recent changes also, right? The societal impact, and I think you heard the news day before yesterday also, right? The agreements being signed at a global scale, the deal of deals kind of model,
Yeah.
and EU becoming a part of it. I think it will. What is your way? Do you think that will help? Like India is poised there, right? People talk about it, but the investment part of it, right? In terms of building LLMs or other stuff and other things, I think somewhere we are behind. But I think with a lot of investments coming from both the sides and such agreements, do you think as a society and India, what is your thought on that?
Obviously, I think the deal is definitely going to positively impact the work which we all do. And overall, the impacts will be on the market transactions, right? And then there will be a lot more technology required to support that, and investment will flow, and may not be much restrictions, and a lot of restrictions will go away, and our people will get more opportunities to connect with the larger market, and I think a lot of solutions will come from India, I'm sure. And there is already, actually, in the AI world, we have a brilliant opportunity to be the leader actually.
Yeah, I think and India is doing a great job in organizing like forums like Viksit Bharat and other stuff where they are trying to upscale people's knowledge. The industries collaborating together and coming out in such a way that everybody is now getting context aware, as you rightly pointed out in the beginning.
Yeah,
So that the shift is happening, right? Only
correct.
thing is how fast it will be is a matter of time, and I think India is well poised to.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally agree.
And I think we are almost toward the end. So, would you like to add anything besides this and give us
No,
your
I think it was very interesting conversation we had, and your questions even it was little thought provoking. I started thinking on the certain aspects on the areas where we are all working, and I think you touched upon a lot of relevant areas, and I really like the way it went.
so I'm also working on a lot of stuff. In fact, doing assessment of aliens to bring them on board. The whole life it's a governance and compliance part of it. So you may have a lot of things going on, but you need a governance, a veto,
Absolutely.
exception kind of model, which actually works in real time. As
Yeah,
you said, moving from the pilot to the enterprise level. But
yeah,
who is the accountable? But the
absolutely.
CEO has to build that whole compliance, governance, global at a global level. Like GCCs would have to do that, or any other company. So I'm working towards that specifically, so that it will help not only people just to develop, but to regulate that development and build a real value. I think we are almost done. So thanks, Shaji. Thanks for sharing your insights with us. And for our listeners who want to follow your thinking, you can connect with Shaji on LinkedIn, where he regularly shares perspective on technology leadership and the future of work. So, with that, I think I will end this conversation. Thank you all for listening. And Shaji, thanks. It was a great insight. Maybe we can talk sometimes on other topics. So that's really and thanks for your valuable time in the
Thank you so
with
much.
your busy schedule. Thank you. Thank you. Have a nice